It is a little past 8:30, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Welcome to our budget workshop for 2026-27. Well, time flies, right? So as I was joking coming in, I had told a great story to the staff when I came in. This is my 27th budget, and I walked both ways uphill, and it was snowing 10 feet. It was they called me a boomer, so I won't bore you with that story. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to my millennial budget team and let them take off and start running to keep it on time. We've scheduled today from 8:30 to 3. We don't think it'll take that long for you, but we want to give you enough time, and we've got some breaks, but Adam and Brian will go over the schedule here in a little while, so I'll turn it over to the team.
I thought it was a good story, so I'm a little sad you didn't tell it.
I want to hear it now.
It's a lot about pushing paper is what it sounds like, I think, to summarize it. So welcome to the budget workshop, Madam Mayor, members of council. Today we've got kind of the first full look of the recommended budget for you all, and we think it's put together very well. Appreciate the staff's work in putting this budget together. We've gotten to a point in our revaluation cycles that occur every 4 years. We're at the last budget cycle before the next upcoming reval, and that has some significant impacts on what we might be able to do in the future. We'll also talk about a variety of other outside factors, including lien recovery in the legislature and some other local factors that could impact what we're able to do with future budgets. So we'll jump in. Again, our goals are to give you an understanding of the recommended budget that will be presented to you for your consideration at the June regular meeting of the City Council, and to prioritize the level of services to be included in the corresponding taxes and rates needed to fund those priorities. Quick outline for the day. I'm going to start us off this morning setting the stage with some background information, talk about the general fund model first, so we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of the workshop, and then break through our funds, the general fund, break in the day, then water sewer fund, and the parking fund. If you recall, we've already talked about stormwater and sanitation at our March workshop. Happy to answer questions about those today. We have those presentations available in your binders, but we're not going to present formally on those today. We'll try to break for lunch around 11:30, and then come back and finish out with special appropriations and the fee schedule update and any other discussion or direction council would like to give in the budget development process. Overall, the major decision points we're asking council to consider are our taxes and rates. We're recommending no change in the property tax rates for the general fund, Main Street, or 7th Avenue. So those rates would remain at 52 cents per hundred for the general fund and 21 cents for both Main and 7th Avenue. Our water and sewer rate recommendation is consistent with the rate schedule we've presented to you over the numerous years now to fund our capital plan, an 8% increase on water rates, and an average 9% increase on sewer rates. As presented in the March workshop, we're continuing to implement the master plan for stormwater. This year is the final increase of that dollar increase and the $50 cap increase, bringing us to a $9 per ERU stormwater rate. We're recommending no changes in sanitation rates. I will note that depending on what the county does with their transfer station rates could impact that recommendation, but we do not know what their direction is at this point. For benefits, we're recommending a 4% COLA. Average merit is about 2.6%, and a 401k increasing 1% to 4% total match for the staff. And then total added positions include 8.5 positions in the general fund, 1.5 in water and sewer, and 1 in housing. And we'll go through the detail of that as we go through the presentation.
We'll go through the detail, but just point out from the get-go that 7 of the 8.5 are related to public safety. Is that number right?
8.
You're right, 8.5 are related to public safety, so.
That's right. So an update in the process, we've been working through this budget since the fall with staff kicking it off then with our CIP. We did deliver 5 budget memos to City Council over the month of April, that outlined what's in this recommended budget. And so one of the big things we will talk about is kind of the manager's message and some of the externalities we're seeing that we talked about in that last memo that we sent out. We're going to talk about property taxes in this setting the stage section, Helene recovery, current parks initiatives, our general obligation bond for transportation. We have an update on that, our financial condition, and the COLA before jumping into the model. And so the manager's message, our city's financial condition is strong right now. We've set ourselves up well for the future, but as you'll see as we go through, there's some big factors that could impact how and when we do future projects or service expansions. Helene recovery remains a top priority and focus for staff. We still are working through that. We'll give you an update on that process specifically. We also are trying to keep in mind that the county has talked about varying ways to pay for the courthouse. Some of those include tax increases. We do not know what they're going to do with that yet, and they have budget meetings this month, so we're watching that, and that could have a detrimental impact on our sales tax collections. And so Adam will detail what that looks like as we go through. At the state, there are various property tax reforms that are being proposed, one being a constitutional amendment to be voted on the November ballot that would direct the legislature to implement limit levies. Now, we don't know how that looks in the long term. We think we would be able to adapt in some form or fashion to that. It's not a great bill for us, but it's something that we're preparing to address if it moves forward. And then there's also a revaluation moratorium that's been proposed in the Senate. The revaluation moratorium is much more detrimental in the short run for us if it were to be extended into our reval cycle. So those are out there, we're watching them, and we're preparing ourselves if those were to move forward. Obviously, there's a large global geopolitical context that sets the stage for very much an uncertain future of our economic outlook. I know the Fed's held rates in April here. There's a new chair coming on board. Whatever they do in June is going to have a major impact on the economy, and so we're watching that, and we have some contingency plans spelt out if there were to be some sort of economic downturn related to those items. And lastly, back to our budget in particular this year, it really focuses on expanding public safety services while balancing a conservative approach to the budget process, and really sets us up to, I think, be flexible and agile as we move into the revaluation year. So the property tax, with the legislature talking about this, I wanted to highlight what has been occurring with the city's property tax, so you have the knowledge around that. I think it's very important for us to always ground ourselves in this, because it is our largest our largest revenue source in the general fund, making up approximately 60% of general fund revenues. It's our only significantly controlled revenue source in the general fund. Revaluations have provided opportunities for broader levy growth while maintaining reasonable rates. We'll talk a little more about that. And the revaluations have also allowed us to keep up with growing cost demands. As you know, the cost for fire trucks has gone up 172%, for example. Cost of repaving roads has gone up significantly, which we'll talk about related to unfunded mandates. So the cost of doing business for local government has far outpaced what even the affordability crises that we're seeing across the consumer markets. So we are really reliant on the property tax to fund our services just to keep up. There's a lot going on this slide. There's 4 different things to highlight here. So the top yellow dotted line is our property tax rate over the past 30 years-ish time frame. It starts in FY 99, so 1999, our tax rate was 55 cents, and you can see where it went where we're proposing in the future reval of getting down to 50 cents. The blue dashed line is the assessed value over that time, the assessed value percent change. And so you can see the revaluations are highlighted there. Also on the red line, so that's our tax levy. So that's the valuation combined with the rate. And you can see that growth over time as well, percent change. And then the bars are the actual dollar value of the assessed value over time. So looking at this from a value standpoint, so the assessed valuation has increased from around 0.7 billion in 1999 to an estimated 3.6 billion in FY27. We've built in like a 20% bump here as an estimated FY28 reval, be 4.3 billion. And you can see the corresponding change in values. And so during the 2000s, you can see our average growth in assessed value was around 11.5%. So there was really strong growth year over year, and then some really big revaluations in there. So there was a 33% revaluation in 2000, a 16% in 04, and then a 30% in 08, right before the Great Recession hit. The 2010s, do you have a question, Gina?
You might be able to answer.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you're good. And then the 2010s, we saw very little growth, about 0.6% on average. This really delayed recovery for local government, especially in Hendersonville. It was lucky that we had the reval right before the Great Recession hit. That helped us, but as you can see, we had a minus 7% reval after that, a 0.8% reval, and then a 18% reval closing out that decade in FY20. We really recovered from the Great Recession around 2016 from a tax base growth. You can see how flat that line was and when it finally caught up to where it was back in 2008. And then more recently, you can see we've had about 9.3% average value growth, and that does include the 2 years of estimates that we have coming up. But we're seeing much more traditional 2000s-esque revaluations and tax-based growth within our economy. When you look at the rate and you look at the levy, so you can notice that we don't always capture that full value growth. You can see we've kept our rate pretty steady. We've established an internal goal of maintaining a rate below 55 cents. That feels like something that would strain our community too much, would be pursuing something further than a tax rate higher than 55. And so we've been able to maintain that. You can see the average tax levy growth in the early 2000s was around 6.6%. Within the recession years, it was around 2.9%. So if you remember, value growth was super low, less than 1% on average. Our tax levy growth was actually higher because we had to raise taxes to provide services. So we had multiple tax rate increases that you can see bottoming out at 38 cents and rising to almost 49 cents over that decade, just due to limited growth from revenues, and then also the legislature took revenue sources away, including privilege license tax during that decade, which equated to about 2 pennies of revenue back when they did that. And so you can see we really had to grow the tax rate because we had no other option because we were seeing such little growth in assessed value. And then as of late, we've averaged about 9.9% tax levy growth year over year. That's been a good combination of the assessed value growth, and then we've kind of kept the tax rate hovering at the 52, 49 cent mark. We've been bouncing around that 50 cent mark for a while. So in summary, our levy growth since 1999 has averaged 6.11%. So that's important to keep in mind when we're thinking about, okay, if the legislature is going to set some sort of levy limit, what has the past 30 years looked like for us? Well, our average is about 6%. And so if they set a limit at 5% or whatever number they pick, this is good information to think through. What could we continue to do if we really focused in on our strategy has been a 4-year cycle, right? We would set a rate, try to hold it for 4 years. Under this new potential model, it would be we're trying to hit a certain mark every single year, and that might be potentially more painful. I don't really know. So those are some strategies that we need to think about. Our tax rate is 3 pennies lower than it was in 1999. In the 2000s, we had a decade of strong revaluations and subsequent tax decreases. 2010 saw that value suffer and the tax rate rise over 10 pennies. In more recent years, we've seen moderate value increases combined with tax rate stability while furthering community projects and initiatives. So moving out of the tax rate, talking about Helene recovery and FEMA. You've seen this slide multiple times. Every time I come and present on this recovery, I've been highlighting the changes in our position from a financial position standpoint. You can see our current revised budget is $11.2 million, with our current actuals and obligations sitting at about $9.4 million. Again, the majority of this is in our water and sewer utility, but we do have a variety of costs in our general fund as well. Current revenues, we have seen a pickup in the pace of FEMA obligations. So we have about $4.1 million in FEMA obligations, and I'm happy to report that almost all of our Cat A and B has been obligated at this point. So that's all of our costs within the first 14 days of the event, essentially. We've now finally buttoned that up. There's one last project that we got kicked back down. We're putting some more information in. It should go back up and move through, and we should be closed out there. On the permanent work side, we have seen some movement there, and I'm going to talk about our fixed cost offers in a minute. Also, as I've highlighted in the past, our cash flow loans have been tremendous in keeping things moving. If we didn't have those cash flow loans, we would be having to make some more difficult decisions around where we put our resources, essentially. And a lot of that is coming from the water and sewer fund. About $9 million of that $10 million is coming from water and sewer. So our current net surplus, that has increased now to $8.9 million. So we're in good financial position in the recovery. We've had the capacity to do some projects and get things moving, but we're also waiting some major decision points. So when speaking about those decision points, one of our biggest priorities in this was pursuing fixed cost offers. Again, these are an estimate submitted by the city to FEMA that then is reviewed, and FEMA makes us an offer and essentially says, yeah, we'll give you $50 million for XYZ. Do you accept? And then we kind of part ways. We're on the hook for any overages, but we don't have to go through the reimbursement process with FEMA anymore, and they just give us the money. So we have pursued this strategy. We think it's a good strategy to pursue, and we've submitted 3 fixed cost offers, one for the wastewater treatment plant headworks project at $125.6 million. It's a major project, and we have been focused really specifically on this project and getting this project over the finish line. So that one is huge. Patton Park and Pool, $21.5 million. And Whitmire Activity Center, that's about $7.1 million. We submitted all of these in February, and DHS went into a shutdown a few days after we got the final one submitted, so all of this got hung up. They were due March 28th or March, something like that, March 30th, I think. And so while they were shut down, we technically lapsed that deadline, even though we had submitted everything on our end before it. And so we've been working now, once they open back up, to get extensions for our projects. We have heard that our extensions have been granted at this point, and now we're back into, okay, they're going to review and make us an offer, hopefully. That's the goal here. So I do want to highlight, these are extremely detailed and well put together fixed cost offers. Brent and the engineering team have been working super diligently on this. Our consultants, Jessica, has been excellent. If you can see on the left, this is the file. This is just for Whitmire. And these files, there's like 500 megabytes of data and files that are in here that we're submitting. Also playing into this, those cash flow loans we've received have allowed us to, pay for these designs and putting these packets together. So that's been critical in this as well. So this is Whitmire, that's a $7 million eligible cost for replacement. And all of these, we've been following the 50% rule determination by FEMA. Essentially, if your cost to repair it, to bring it to codes and standards, exceeds 50% of the full replacement cost. So if it costs more than 50% to repair it in place versus replacing the whole thing, they will allow you to replace the whole thing. And so about $4 million to repair versus $7 million to replace, that allows us to ask for the full $7 million. And each of these projects we've followed that process. This is a snapshot of the wastewater plant. They've done tremendous design with McKim & Creed. Zach Trammell, right? Yeah, Zach Trammell's been our consultant there. They've been working diligently with us on that. This is a massive packet that we've put together here. And then also on the Patton Park and Pool, you can see some of the breakdown on the sides of just how detailed we're getting into the nuts and bolts of what it's going to take to build these facilities back. So our team has been working very diligently. I know from a public facing side, you don't really see the making of the sausage here, but this has been a major lift, and our team has been working really hard on it. And I think we've put ourselves in the best position we can. So we'll see how that plays out.
And you got a pretty positive comment from the state, I think, right?
Yeah, State North Carolina Emergency Management, essentially said these are some of the best fixed cost offers they've seen. So our team's been doing excellent work.
Hopefully that'll pay off, right?
You never know. Yeah, so this goes through our PDMG, and the task force that's kind of local goes through our state NCEM. They're essentially submitting on our behalf for most everything in this process, and it goes to the Consolidated Resource Center. And so once it's there, it's in a specialist team called 428. It's hazard mitigation type teams, and so they're reviewing it, and essentially the directors at FEMA then make a decision of how much they're going to offer us. The nice, safe aspect of this approach is we don't have to accept the offer, and we can continue to plug along and go the reimbursement process. So we're waiting for the CRC to review and then say, hey, this looks good, we're going to offer you X amount of dollars. And then we have 30 days to accept that letter. So a lot of these will probably potentially need a special meeting where we will be coming to council and saying, hey, FEMA's offered us this much money. Are we good to go or not? Highlighting some current park initiatives. Patton Park and Whitmire Activity Center, we just talked about. Those FCOs are out there. Those are really, really critical, and we're going to segue into that when talking about the model update. Because if we receive that type of money from FEMA, it's going to really impact our capacity to do potentially other projects in the future. And if we don't, then it's, we're really having to focus in on us raising the revenue to do some of these projects. South Main Street Park, currently the build grant was submitted in March timeframe? January? So we've submitted the build grant in January, and the notice of award should be in late June. Some of those dates have known to slide, so we'll see when we hear back on that. That's another critical unknown at this point. We could have really significant impacts on what we're able to do in the general fund. The Clear Creek Greenway project, that has been bid by NCDOT, and we're attempting to get some final money from the MPO to make that project whole. You'll have an agenda item on your May 13th meeting about this, and then we'll do a more full update at the June regular meeting for City Council. Sullivan Park Playground, we had a good community meeting about this on Monday night, along with other neighborhood initiatives. We've received a Part F grant for this. That's $350,000. We would have to match that at $350,000, so we're currently evaluating how we're going to put the money into that. We do have some time to figure that out, and so we've been kind of waiting to see where some of these other projects come in. Rosa Edwards, we held a community meeting 2 weeks ago, I think. And so we held a meeting there. We're currently working through that process. No identified funding sources as of yet, so we're just doing the input pieces of that park. Above the Mud Greenway, we're looking for funding sources because I think it's important to note that Above the Mud previously could have been included in the build grant application. However, under the new guidance, it was not eligible, so that piece of the project has been pulled out of the build grant.
I just want to add one thing about Rosa Edwards. So at this point, I think council and the community was very loud and clear as keeping that as passive as it can be at this point, and any changes to that would be very minor, but not be as extensive as the proposed part of that we shared. So I just want to clarify that if we go forward, it would be minor improvements at that, based on what we heard from the community and council.
And then disc golf, obviously this is, well, not obviously, but this has gotten caught up in the Helene recovery as well. And so this has been delayed indefinitely until we can most likely have to find a new location. There is some opportunity with the Clear Creek Greenway project for this. So we're looking into that, and we'll come back with an update there. The main reason this is not moving forward is the wastewater treatment plant requires us to move our mulch yard, which requires us to move our disc golf. So it kind of moves some pieces around, and the wastewater plant and the mulch yard take priority over the disc golf project. I was hoping that was FEMA with money for us. I was like, maybe that. Our GeoBond, an update here. So we had a current project out to bid as we were working through the GeoBond process. And so that current project, you can see the streets that are going to be resurfaced over on the right here in the teal color. So pretty much all of the Ash Street neighborhood and 7th Avenue from the tracks to the Greenway, Williams Street and 4th Avenue here, and then Bearcat out in front of the school. A lot of this is associated with the water and sewer work we've been doing in the neighborhoods. And so coming back in with new streets and new curb ramps. And so the bid came in, this is approximately 2.1 miles of linear feet of street, around 268,000 square feet of asphalt. The average PCI prior to all the water and sewer work was a 57. It's obviously a lot worse now. And this bid came back and replaced about 28 ADA ramps. The total cost of the project was around $1.4 million. Under this project example, we would meet the resurfacing goals we spelt out in the GeoBond proposal. We would not meet the ADA ramp goals based on this bid. I'll go into a little more detail on that. And then also our first draw target for the bond issuance is June of 27 to give us some time before we start paying debt service on that, leading into the next budget year. So for future projects, what this means, if all else were the same, right? There's a lot of things that are variables in this that we can try to adjust for. We would be resurfacing around 640,000 square feet of pavement every year. Our current estimate was around 500,000, so we're getting extra resurfacing out of this type of bid. However, we'd only get about 20 curb ramps a year. Our original goal was 83 to 84 curb ramps a year, so the curb ramp cost is way, way more significant than expected. One thing to note is the way we bid this is we bid this current project as a resurfacing project, and that contractor would also replace the curb ramps as they go, how DOT has been doing their projects. And so Tar Heel was the awarded bidder on that. They're not a concrete company, so they're having to sub that out. We're thinking potentially if we peel this out, bid out curb ramps separately and specifically, we might get better pricing with more specific contractors who do that type of work. So we're going to continue to work that, but currently, if all else were the same, resurfacing's good, has a little extra, curb ramps are not getting there based on the goals. And none of this includes our safety and transportation network improvements. That's a separate bucket of money. So we'll be moving some of those projects forward this fall as well. Getting into the COLAs, so we just got the league's COLA survey back, and the average COLA merit combined across the state is about 6.06%. For our region, 5.9%. Our proposed average COLA merit combination is 6.6%, so we are ahead of the state. On the COLA side specifically, the statewide average is 2.9. Our COLA is 4. So we're leading on the COLA front, and then those who do offer merits bring that average up. Only 30 or so respondents, so I think it was 15%, Adam, of the respondents actually offer a merit. So that we are a leader for the benefits across the state. Most of the respondents are just offering an on average 2.9% COLA. Some detail on living wage targets. Currently, about 50% of job classifications meet the living wage target. After the COLA and merit implementations, we estimate 63% of job classifications, 50% of job classifications currently and 63% of employees are currently meeting the living wage target. After the implementation, we expect 62% and 72% will be meeting from classifications and employee salaries. And that number is $24.10 an hour for the Just Economics living wage rate.
Is that total employees, full-time employees, or does that include?
That's total full-time, right?
Yeah, the employees number is full-time graded employees and also R2 contracted employees. Yes.
Hitting on our financial condition, we talked about how we're in strong condition. This is important. This is how we do things well, is being financially sustainable. It prepares us for the future. And so some of the things we've talked about in the strategic plan are having confidence in our revenue models, having acknowledgement and goals of upper thresholds for our rates and our taxes. So we protect affordability for our residents. Revenue diversification is important. And the fact that we do transparent and regular data-driven decision-making for the city council. So this is our scorecard. We've reviewed this before. This outlines our key indicators. So one of the most important indicators is our fund balance indicator. This talks about the cash we have available to pay for normal operating expenses, emergency funds. It provides us the ability to adapt to unforeseen opportunities. That could be needing to purchase a piece of land for an economic development project, or this could be responding to an emergency like Helene, or being agile in uncertain economic times. So fund balance is extremely important, and it's also required to issue debt with LGC approval. And so you can see on here, our fund balance targets are at the top, and you can see our dollar available, percent available, total, and total as a percent of expenditures. We're estimating to be above our targets for all of those in the upcoming budget and the end of the upcoming fiscal year. And you can see our actuals from FY25, we met all of those targets. Operating indicators, so this points to our ability to fund services on a recurring basis, so our regular operations. A negative ratio really is going to be the first indicator that we're going to start depleting our fund balance and have other issues. We'll start pulling back on capital, and our fund balance will start going down. So this is a preliminary indicator. It's a very important indicator of how we're doing. You can see this in the middle area, and you can see we ran at 7.17% operating ratio in FY25. And we plan to be around 5 to 4% in the current upcoming years. You can see we were below in FY24, and that led to some issues with our fund balance that year as well. So operating-wise, this budget puts us in good position. Capital indicators, that's the third line down. This is our capital ratio, so a percent of total spending. We try to be above 3%. This budget gets us up to 2%, and we have been historically low in this area. We have been cutting back capital and keeping it tight to balance the budget and get us in a better position with our fund balance to move things forward. The key thing about this ratio and what it's going to indicate, though, is that we're not, replacing capital on a proactive basis, and it could lead to deferred maintenance and heftier costs in the long run. So it's important to get this back up above 3%, and we've been moving towards that goal each year. Our debt service indicators, this just represents the total amount we're spending on debt as a percent of total spending. This points to our capacity to issue additional debt, and sometimes not meeting this ratio could impact our bond ratings with the rating agencies. So it's important to pay attention to this. We try to be below 15%. You can see we're right at 15% in FY24 and 25, and we've dropped down to the 12s here in FY26 and 27. Lastly, our assessed value indicators. This is the engine, like we talked about with property tax earlier. This is the engine that keeps our services running and keeps us able to keep up with demands of our community. We want to be above 3% every year in growth. That's our goal. We've had really good growth recently. If you looked at this back in the 2010s, we would have never met this target. And so you can just see the scorecard over time here, going back to FY20, and you can see some of the, the leading operating indicators. -9 here leads into a pretty poor FY24. So you just have that data that's available for you. And if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. Going to jump into the general fund model. So this is current for our proposed budget. If you remember back during the council retreat, I showed a D up there, I believe, on the scorecard. We're currently looking at a B level based on our indicators. So this is a good financial condition. It does prepare us for the future, and I'm going to highlight some of the points of this. But before I do that, I just want to highlight, what this model is. This is an Excel workbook. It projects costs out through 2060 at this point. And we can go further, but we don't think there's too much point in doing that. But you can see how detailed it gets within, our salary, our operating, our capital, additional staffing for all of our departments and all of our revenue sources. It also includes debt for major projects. So we can say, hey, we want to do a mulch yard site, and we put it in for $2 million. The model then takes that input, builds out an amortization schedule for us, and then builds that new debt capacity into the model and runs through all our financial indicators. And so the model provides a pretty robust projection for debt issuances and projects. It also allows us to detail the potential costs of personnel additions. And so we have about 28 personnel additions built out through the future years in this model that then are dropping in and showing us our capacity to fund those. It also includes growth from development. So we're planning out, developments get approved many years back. Cantrell Hills, for example, was approved in 2019. It's just now finally being built out in 2026. And so we put these into the model, and we're conservative about when they're going to come online, but we do think it's important to acknowledge that these things are happening, and not just to use a very conservative assessed value growth. The point of this model is to try to give us as close to an estimate of what really is going to happen in the future as possible, so we can make some sound decisions around our investments and service provisions. I'll be frank, if we just budgeted on a highly conservative basis, we would tell you could do nothing every year, year over year, forever, and our fund balance would probably just balloon into oblivion. We find it really important to give you fair estimates so you can make reasonable decisions with those. And then lastly, we're tracking our financial indicators in here. So all of these things go in. We tinker with this throughout the budget process, and we see what, check engine lights might be triggering in the future. So in this model, currently a B, the only indicators that are flashing in this is this 25.2 for 2031. That available fund balance is getting pretty tight at that point. And our operating and revenue, our operating ratio drops below 0, a negative 2%. So not great, but the following year is a reval, so it improves immediately the following fiscal year. But you can also see the one thing in here is our debt service expenditure ratio. So we're taking on more debt in this current model than our current spending levels. And so that's just something to be aware of. It's not wildly out of hand, but again, it's just something to look at. And we'll talk a little bit more about the detail of that. So what is in the model right now? You can see all of our planned vehicle and equipment replacements, including our major replacements of fire engines built out through 2042 when we're set to replace the tower again. We have our 2 tranches of the GEO bond, so we're going to pull one tranche of $5 million in 2028 and then another tranche of $5 million in 2030. So that debt will come on during those years. We have a mulch-yard site for $2 million in here. We have a GEO bond for parks. We've listed that generally because again, we just don't know what's happening with FEMA, and this is one of those big toggles that will impact what else we can do. And I'll go over there and I'll turn it on and off and just show you the impacts of that. We're just holding 20 million there in case we get a very low amount from FEMA on Patton and Whitmire, so we can fund it, right? So I think it's important to note we're sitting at a B. We have a pretty good looking financial condition, even with a $20 million parks bond in here. And that's programmed for 2028. And then lastly, we have Fire Station 3 built in at 2030. We think that this station is becoming much more important with the growth along the south side of the city, especially with the apartment complexes. And so we wanted to start planning for that facility expansion. We have $9 million in here. This would be a smaller station, not a headquarters station. So I want to pause here. Anything missing in y'all's mind? Some of the things I think through with this is we have the $20 million set aside. We have Above the Mud Greenway at $8 million. That's turned off right now. We have Rosa Edwards. We have Safety City. We have Columbarium at Oakdale. We have these other initiatives that are out there that we don't have in here yet. But from our budget positioning, we're trying to say, all right, we've got a $20 million hold, but we just don't know FEMA yet. And so that's what we've built in at this point.
So Brian, if we did get FEMA, so say we receive.
Yes. say we receive the $21 million, right?
Yeah.
We could turn this 20 million off, hypothetically, and or figure out how we build some of that capacity out for, matching overages or other enhancements at these parks, or putting Above the Mud in, or taking a loan out for a columbarium at Oakdale. So it's really a toggle that would impact us based on whatever FEMA decides to do.
So are you going to show?
I will. I think you had a question.
Okay, sorry.
You're good. Yes.
Can we talk about the mulch-yard site and what options are around it?
Yes.
What's been going into it?
And Brent left.
I think you had to
Yeah,
step
yeah.
up.
But I can talk as best I can about it.
Okay.
So
Sorry, Brett, I'm sure.
the mulch-yard site currently is at the location of where we would move the headworks for the wastewater plant. And so the siting of a mulch-yard site is very involved. You can't have it within so many feet of a residence, of a stream. There's environmental impacts you have to consider, soils, all sorts of stuff. Our easiest positioning of moving our mulch-yard site is across the greenway up near the quarry and along that hillside. And so that's the contingency plan essentially for the mulch yard site at the moment, but something that's still very much in flux and that we're working through.
How much land do you estimate needing for it, or are you looking at? Is that a Brent question? I can wait.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Just trying to get like a visual of it.
And that's something we'll talk a lot more about as we continue through the design of the wastewater project.
And by moving it to, hopefully, we'll never experience another Helene, but Helene, we saw capacity issues at our site, current site, being able to store the debris. Secondly, if we move it, it removes conflicts between wastewater staff,
Public.
septic haulers, and the public trying to get to the mulch site. So it would be a dramatic improvement, is our plan, that it would, for the public and for us from an operational and security standpoint.
The $2 million though for the mulch site, we're having to address the mulch site due to the project, due to the hurricane. And so is that not included in the fixed cost project?
No, it's not.
Why?
I don't think it qualifies. And that $2 million is a placeholder. Thank you, Allison. I knew at some point you would come out here with a microphone. Okay. In here, we have police staffing built in. Again, we have 6 positions for police in the current budget, 4 regular officers, a civilian traffic investigator, and a telecommunicator, and then we have 2 fire training safety officers as part of a reorg for fire. And so we have that in, and then we have future positions built out over time to kind of hold space in the future budgets for position additions, because we know those are needed. So we're just kind of holding space for those in the future years, addition to public works positions as well. Our model includes the full list of current projects in development, with a few things turned off, and then specifically highlighting we have been conservative with some of the economic development projects in the future on this, and we're waiting to see kind of where those numbers actually come in. And once we have those numbers built in, like we have for Jable, we can more specifically build it into the model. But we have those conservatively built out into 2038 at this point. This focuses on revals, right? We've talked about our strategy around this. So this focuses on recouping 15% of a 20% reval. We think that's conservative, and that would bring our rate down to 50 cents per $100 of value. Obviously, this is something that is completely up in the air, and we have no clue where this will actually land until we get into next year's budget. But from a planning perspective, we think this is a conservative and fair outlook.
Have we just toggled that reeval off just to see what happens?
Yeah, if we toggle that off, you probably need 4 pennies or so. And then just to round it out, like, again, there's a lot of unknowns impacting this budget strategy, FEMA funding being one, the build grant being another, and then legislature being the third. And so all of these in some combination can dramatically impact what we need to be prepping for FY28. So we believe what we're proposing here in FY27 from a scorecard perspective puts us in good position to adapt to that going forward. Best case scenario, FEMA says these are great, gives us the money, we get a build grant, and the legislature cools off on their property tax reform. We're in very good position to talk about what other priorities we want to pursue from a project's perspective. If all of these go in the opposite direction, we're going to have to be talking about tax rate increases and service cuts. And I'll show just really quickly what the model looks like when you turn the 20 million on and off. All right, so this is the actual model. You can see the 25.2% up here. Maybe you can't, it's pretty small. And some of the indicators, we go over to our inputs tab, we get the 20 million bond for parks, turn that off. And you can see our available fund balances jump up into the 40 percentile, which is really, really good. So we'd have a lot of flexibility. We'd be running a operating ratio around 8%. So that's just putting too much money back into the fund balance. When we start doing this, it's either we need to start talking about property tax decreases or enhancing service provisions. So that $20 million is very impactful. So just want to demonstrate that. And that's all I have on the model and setting the stage. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam and Jenny, and they are going to run us through the detail of each fund.
Mayor, Council, good morning. This is going to be more of the same of what you've already seen related to the Stormwater Fund and the ESF. So we're going to present the recommended budget and compare that recommended budget to the current year revised, and then also look at some of the actions that we took during the budget development process to get to the recommended budget. In each of these funds, so for the general fund for now, we're going to focus on revenues followed by expenditures. Then we're going to look at your other recommended sources, uses, and fund balance, and then we'll talk about any strategic plans and future priorities that we may want to consider. The usual reminder, budgeting is both an art and a science. We provide really good estimates. We reviewed some of those estimates and comparisons to actuals at Budget Retreat in February. We do really well, but there's always room for improvement, and there's always room for externalities to impact our estimate development. We render the estimates at budget adoption, and we keep them consistent throughout the fiscal year. We don't change them, and that is to show the accuracy of our forecasting. Brian already mentioned this, but just to recap, in the general fund, our FY27 recommendations include a tax rate at 52 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. The cost of living adjustment recommendation is currently 4.0%, so 4% flat. The 401k match is recommended to increase by 1% to 4%. And then we're also, within the general fund, recommending 8.5 position additions. Just another way of looking at these recommendations and items for your consideration. We're showing the initial recommendation, which was reviewed in February, and the updated recommendation today. You'll notice if you look through this table, the only difference here is the cost of living adjustment, which we have reduced from 5.7% to 4.0%. Getting into the revenue specifics, we're going to start with ad valorem taxes, which are your property tax. So our FY27 recommended rate, 52 cents per 100 at current assessed values, would generate $18.4 million in budgeted revenue, which is a $1.1 million increase compared to the current year revised budget, which is $17.3 million. That's a 6.4% year-over-year increase. And then you'll notice in the FY27 estimate column that we expect actuals to exceed budget. So we budget very conservatively related to property tax. We plug that into the general fund model, as Brian has already alluded to. And based on our historical actuals, we expect we will end next fiscal year at $19.2 million in property tax revenue. That is all centered around our collection percentage assumptions, which are currently 98.6%, The county's performing a little bit better, which plays to our benefit at collecting those property tax revenues. And then also their projection file, which was released in March, shows our assessed value increasing by 3.48%. So current assessed value is $3.443 billion, and the projection for next year is to increase to 3.562. At this point in the assessment process, we feel those assessments may be a little conservative, so there's some wiggle room upwards to help with our actual collections, leading to the $19.2 million estimate. In your unrestricted intergovernmental revenue source, that is mostly sales tax. So as we know, sales tax is an elastic revenue source. It is very market dependent, and it was discussed, I think, several times throughout the memos that were released during April. But the recommended sales tax budget is, the recommended unrestricted governmental budget in total is recommended at $9.9 million, which is a $505,000 increase over the current year revised budget. Part of the reason for that increase, we've budgeted sales tax very conservatively so far this fiscal year. So a large portion of that increase is due to our conservative budgeting practices. And as we know, there are some market conditions that are leading us to budget that revenue source conservatively next fiscal year as well. Also in this subcategory, there are alcoholic beverage commission revenues, which we're recommending to decrease slightly by $75,000. That's reflective of some trends that show the millennial generation and others are tending to drink less. Alcohol sales are down. So we felt it was reasonable to be very conservative with budgeting for that revenue source. And as we know, electric utility sales tax, that revenue source is increasing year over year, so we're recommending a slight increase there. Looking at sales tax a little more specifically, this source is $495,000 over the current year budget. And the table is a little overwhelming here, but the key takeaway is that in fiscal year 26, the current year, our actuals are trending at about 13.6% over our initially estimated and recommended budget. So for next year, we're forecasting out the remaining periods of FY26, and we're adding 2% as natural growth onto that revenue source. So very conservative sales tax budget. However, that does increase, and if estimates prove accurate, the general fund would end FY27 with about $7.8 million in sales tax revenue, with just a little bit, 5% going to the Main Street MSD fund, which is around $420,000 of sales tax revenue, and then 1% to the 7th Avenue MSD fund, so about $83,000. It's not included on here because we just got the estimate last night, but the sales month for February, those actuals have been received. They were $590,000, so that actually exceeded our budget for the period by 15.36%. So just as an example, those revenues are turning up, they're looking good, and we've considered all of that in our budget development. Looking at the statewide trends, we're not the only case with sales tax growth. Most counties, all highlighted blue on this map, are experiencing growth. So 67% of our 100 counties are growing at 5% year over year in gross sales tax distributions. 30 of those counties are growing between 0 and 5%, and only 3 counties are experiencing negative gross sales tax. One of the more important takeaways, I think, from this slide is that refunds are growing. I actually saw an article from the Department of Commerce yesterday that showed that data centers, for example, are getting electricity utility sales tax refunds along with refunds on equipment that they need to operate data centers. So data centers might be contributing to the refund growth year over year. It's hard to say what exactly goes into that due to ambiguity and reporting at the state level. But the good news here is our sales tax is growing along with our neighbors.
Adam, one thing I think is important to point out on that state slide, if you don't mind going back really quick, just is that you can see Buncombe County over on the right, actually gross sales tax is up around 8%, and that's a good sign for the region, I think. We would not want to see folks in our region, dropping in sales tax. That would be something to keep an eye on and be worried about. So it's good that they're doing well.
Sorry. Does that also have anything to do with the fact that their sales tax is higher than ours as well?
No, that sales tax is separate than what's reported here.
Okay.
Looking more specific to Hendersonville, this chart is mapping out our actual distributions that we've collected since fiscal year 2018. That's represented in the navy blue line chart. So those are the actual collections, and then we've placed a pink dot line as our exponential forecast. So you can see since about FY24, we've been growing $100,000 or so in average collections per period, and we expect that trend to continue into FY27. So that is all considered in the sales tax numbers that we reviewed on the previous slide. You can also see that refund fact represented in the kind of blue area chart that's placed in the background here. So that's our record of any countywide refunds that were processed for a period. Another way of looking at this is just examining the year-over-year percent changes. So in FY25 and FY26, there were no negative growth periods in sales tax revenues, all positive. And as I mentioned, in FY26 specifically, we're trending at about 13% over our estimates. So sales tax is looking very strong this fiscal year. It's important to look at sales tax also in relation to the other jurisdictions in our county, because we receive sales tax on an ad valorem basis. So as our portion of the property tax pie and value within the county grows, as does our sales tax in the following year. So what we're showing here is a look at our share dating back to FY24, which was a reval year. At that time, our percentage of the pie was 9.15%. And due to the impacts from revaluation in FY25, our percentage share related to the county and the other jurisdictions within Henderson County grew to 9.93%. So very positive impact there. Also in FY25, we changed the property tax rate. So we were at 0.49 and we increased to 0.52 in FY25. That had a multiplying effect on sales tax distributions in FY26. So we increased a little over a full percentage to 10.97% of the total share of sales tax distributions in the county. And then finally, in FY27, due to recent ongoing economic development, we project that we will receive about 11.15% of the total sales tax that the county sees. We also represent this on a dollar change basis. So what we do with these charts is show the total sales tax distribution for FY24 as a constant, and apply that percentage share throughout each year. So the first waterfall chart to the left shows the dollar changes that occurred between FY24 and FY25. Again, all things constant. Hendersonville grew its sales tax distribution by $417,000. In FY26, our share grew $552,000, and then we project in FY '27 will grow another $97,000. But as Brian mentioned, there are a lot of factors pushing on sales tax and demanding that maybe some of our neighbors alter their property tax rate, which ultimately impacts in FY '28 what we receive from a sales tax perspective. So we ran a few what-if analyses, this one being specifically related to the county's tax rate. So the county's tax rate is currently 0.431 per 100. And if this year the county adopts an FY '27 budget that increases by a penny, we would expect the county's portion of the total sales tax pie to grow by $103,000. Our share would grow, not by the $97,000 that we originally project, but by $4,840. So a much smaller increase, but an increase nonetheless. If the county adjusts and they increase their property tax rate by 3 cents, you can see that we would have actually a negative impact to our share of the sales tax pie in FY '28. So instead of gaining $97,000, we would be losing about $172,000 worth of that pie. And then finally, if the county increases their property tax rate by 5 cents, we would lose $338,000 worth of that share, and the county would gain $714,000. And as far as the other jurisdictions within the county goes, this assumes that they're going to keep their property tax rates consistent. Pausing for the pictures. Go back? Okay. Great. So all this to say, sales tax is very complicated. We monitor it in various ways. If there's a more specific analysis you would like on sales tax, we're happy to provide it. Moving on to the restricted intergovernmental revenue source within the general fund, our FY '27 recommended budget is a decrease of about $33,000. That's just due to some one-time grant revenue and other items received in FY '26 that we don't include in the adopted budget. So we provide amendments throughout the year, and if in FY '27 we receive grants and other one-off revenues, we'll make those increases, which would bring this higher. This revenue source also includes SRO reimbursements, which are budgeted at $360,000. It also includes our PAL bill revenue, which is budgeted at about $570,000. And as a reminder, we'll talk about this later, that is going to be transferred to the GEO bond project in FY '27. There are no changes to our recommended budget for ABC law enforcement revenues. They remain constant at $40,000. And those are the sources that make up our restricted intergovernmental source. Permits and fees are relatively minor. Our recommended budget is $647,000. That's a decrease of $4,000 compared to current year revised budget. By the end of FY '27, we estimate we'll collect about $692,000. So again, we budget conservatively. We expect higher actuals by the end of FY '27. And within this source, the major revenues are fire zoning, demolition fees, which are all budgeted conservatively, and also our motor vehicle fee, which is the primary source, which is $400,000. Again, this is to be combined with the PAL bill and transferred to the GEO bond project. Investment earnings, again, budget conservatively, so our recommended budget is $210,000. Compared to the current year budget, that appears to be a decrease. Our actuals are trending over budget. So as you know, in next year, the actuals come in month over month at a higher rate than we expect, we will provide amendments, and that also is reflected in our estimate of $410,000 in FY '27. Miscellaneous revenues are minor, so there's a $66,000 decrease in appearance compared to FY26 revised budget. That's due to, again, one-time revenues that we didn't expect when we originally adopted FY26 and adjusted throughout the year to take advantage of those opportunities. So mostly just miscellaneous income related to police, public works, and the fire department in 26. So don't budget those in FY27. We'll amend the budget when that revenue becomes available. And that's the end of revenues. Are there any questions or items you guys would like to go back to? Great. On the expenditure side of the house, starting with personnel and benefits, our FY27 recommended budget is $20.8 million, which is a $1.6 million increase compared to the current year budget. This budget includes factors that we've already reviewed, like the cost of living adjustment at 4%, merit-based increases, which are recommended at the same level as FY26. We did increase medical insurance budget by 2%. There is sufficient budget to maintain the 4% 401k match program next year. And then we also factored in increases to the local government employee retirement system. So general class employees will be going up 0.75%, and law enforcement employees will be going up 1%. So that program continues to get more expensive, but I think there's some potential that set of increases might be flatlining looking to future years. This budget also includes our 8.5 FTE additions, and to recap specifically the positions that are included in the general fund, those are 4 police officers, police telecommunicator, and a civilian traffic crash investigator who will free up time for our officers to do proactive investigative work. And then in the fire department, we have 2 added fire safety and training officers. And in HR, we will have a part-time human resources coordinator to help with payroll and other activities as needed.
Adam, before you leave this slide, I'll start, Brian, and you can clean up anything I get wrong. So, going back to the police officers, basically adding an additional officer per patrol squad. So, those folks on the street directly, and then the telecommunicator to move us toward what is needed to handle the call volume at the PD. We'll be looking, just transparently, as part of next year, we'll be looking at our dispatch system and looking for efficiencies and opportunities there. And looking forward to the civilian crash investigator that can help us with parking lot crashes and minor motor vehicle crashes, and leaving our patrol, as Adam said, leaving our patrol officers on the street. The 2 fire safety training officers includes the elimination of one single captain, training officer, and taking that position plus these 2 and adding on shift safety and training officers, was actually put another firefighter on the ground at fire scenes and helping us to further staff our QRVs is the intent there. So taking a administrative position, taking that position plus 2, so each shift will have, actually becomes a senior captain, if I'm correct, which will help the battalion chief in, again, putting another operational person on each shift to allow us to have boots on the ground. And then I want to point those out as it relates to what that does. Less administration and more direct service delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Getting into some of the details on the personnel budget. So in February, we provided a living wage catch-up plan, as is our typical practice. when we reviewed this, and is still the case, if we keep up with inflation, so if we match CPI year over year, and then add 3% on top of that to our cost of living adjustment, if we keep that consistent practice through FY34, we expect that all of our positions would be at or above a living wage by FY34. There's also an option to either take the whole chunk or a portion of that reval gap out of the chart in FY28. And then on the next slide, we show the numbers behind that reval. So if in FY28 council chooses to close that full living wage gap, we would need a reval or a recapture of about 13.28%, which equivalates to $475 million in increased assessed value across properties. So that would be adding about $3.7 million to the general fund budget, specifically for personnel and benefits related costs. And then also just wanted to show the impact of increased Elgers rates throughout the years. So back in FY20, when the city's contribution for non-law enforcement and law enforcement employees was relatively lower at 8.95 and 9.7%, our total cost was $1.3 million, but as those rates have nearly doubled going into FY27 at 15.1% and 17.1%, our Elgers program contributions are just shy of $4.3 million across all of our funds.
I think I just want to note, it makes it, the amount of money it takes to hire a police officer is not just a $50,000 salary. You know, we're paying 20% of their salary just in retirement costs, and this is a huge driver of the city's cost increases over the years. Another one of those, you know, things we have to fund that doesn't necessarily have any backing behind it from any other revenue sources besides our own.
And I think that is, going back to the slide talking about personnel, where if we have opportunities to civilianize positions, that helps us keep the police officers on the street, and also handle service delivery by civilian position where we can. It benefits us in many ways. It benefits from a service delivery, but also from a budgetary standpoint.
So if there are no other...
Adam, were you going to talk about potential changes from the state treasurer related to retirement? Did you mention, I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but there are some potential opportunities there. As you've seen, the increases has been based on a formula or a plan put together by the previous treasurer and the retirement committee that looks at that. The current treasurer has been a little more aggressive as it relates to investments of our overall statewide local government retirement system portfolio, which appears to be bringing in more returns, which helps the bottom financial returns. So we're hoping that we'll be able to adjust what our contributions are from an employer and employee, that will level off a little bit. So we don't know yet, but we hope that's in the future.
Great point, John. So moving on to the operating expenditure subcategory within the general fund. FY27's recommended budget is just over $7 million, which is actually a decrease of $166,000 compared to the current year revised budget. The largest portion of that net decrease is the movement of PAL bill funds out of the operating budget into a transfer out to the GEO bond project. There are a few contracted services, utilities, and non-capital increases that are raising that just slightly, but still a net negative year over year as a whole. That $51,000 increase, I think, just as an example to how everything is inflating in the economy, is specifically for the police department's tasers. So the last time we renewed tasers, we were able to buy all of the equipment and associated attachments and subscriptions at one time. But now we're just due to the overall cost of doing business and a near monopoly on the market, we're having to split that over, I think, a 5-year term is what we landed on. So there is a $51,000 increase in there for tasers, and just using that as an example of the inflation that we're experiencing due to current market conditions.
Adam,
Yes.
that 51,000 for the tasers, is that over 5 years? Is that
Yes.
annually?
Annually.
So that's how many tasers that we probably?
50 or so.
Yeah. Chief, I know included enough tasers to account for officer expansion and position additions. Yeah.
One thing I also want to highlight in here that's very important is under professional and contracted services, part of that increase, we have $150,000 set aside for zoning ordinance changes. So a consultant to assist with our UDO.
And then our only supporting slide on the operating, we could go through this ad nauseum with you all, but we will save you the pain and just let you know that we go over everybody's comments about 13 different times during the budget process, probably more than that when you think about all the stages of development. Justin was kind enough to provide this very detailed request for the fire department, and then I had some notes that I hit him back with, but we go through this. We're very thorough. There's a lot that goes into operating budget development. It seems simpler than it probably is in reality. So we spend a lot of time reading comments and going over stuff. And then getting into capital, our FY27 recommended budget for capital is $422,000. Sorry for the typo there. Sorry, 442. That's a $128,000 increase, and during the budget process, we started with a request of $3.8 million. During the development process, we reduced about $3.4 million out of the capital program, and I felt this entire process that it's a little unfair to represent this because $3 million of that cost was a $3 million crime center that was requested that we'll prioritize, and have heard comments from other jurisdictions that the cost is closer to maybe $250,000 to $300,000. So we technically adjusted that out, but $3 million was for that crime center. And in the bulleted list below,
Adam, take the credit, man. You got $3.3 million out of the budget.
I single-handedly reduced this budget by $4 million. So there are a lot of capital items that are still included in the budget. We focused again on public safety equipment and critical needs. So you can see that list. I will not go through every single item, but I am happy to answer any questions or look confused at the staff member that requested them. Okay. Debt service, the recommended FY27 budget for anything we're paying on loans, borrowings, so on and so forth is $4,189,000. 26,000 net decrease compared to the current year revised budget. That is due to some final partial payments on previously borrowed debt. So we had a 2017 GEO bond refunding, which brought down our costs at the time. We received a more favorable interest rate, and that That debt is going to be paid off in FY '27, along with our 2022 and 2023 vehicle and equipment loans. Raising, still a net decrease, but raising our debt service costs just a bit. Our first payment on a lean cash flow loan, and then payments on the FY '26 vehicle and equipment loan. In FY '27, we don't expect debt service to hit for the FY '27 vehicle and equipment loan, but we did budget for the following vehicles. So 12 police vehicles, which we expect to come in around $845,000. There's 3 pieces of public works vehicles and equipment that we'll replace, along with a code enforcement vehicle. And if there are no questions on operating expenses, we will go into other financing sources and uses. So this is anything that occurs below the line. So infrequent activity, and then also fund balance is beginning to be considered here. So our FY '27 recommended other financing sources and uses in the general fund is really just a $1.4 million transfer out. That is reflective of our $900,000 budgeted transfer to the GEO bond project, which we will do every single year through FY '31. It also includes a $40,000 transfer to the Oakdale Cemetery Improvements Project, which we've been doing, I think, for 3 fiscal years now. We're also using some of the general fund's resources to balance out other funds that aren't required to carry a fund balance, but it is best financial practice to go ahead and take care of that. So at a budgeted level, we expect to cover Main Street with $192,000 from the general fund. The 7th Avenue MSD fund was $76,000, and the parking fund with another $199,000. We do apply estimates to these other funds, so because we expect revenues to come in over budget and expenditures to come in under budget, we estimate that those transfers will be less substantial, which leads to an estimated $1.1 million transfer out of the general fund in FY '27. Again, this assumes that no amendments occur that push this up during the fiscal year next year. And finally, we will talk about fund balance. The most recent fund balance number actual that we have for the general fund is $12,433,902. So that's what was reported in the FY '25 ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It's also what we consider the FY '26 beginning of year balance. It's not depicted here, but our FY '26 estimated fund balance, because the year has not ended and we don't have an audited figure, is an increase of about $510,000. So this year we expect fund balance to increase by about $500,000 to $12.9 million. And in FY '27, we expect to add $298,000 to fund balance as well. So not taking into consideration the FY '26 estimate, if we just net zero in FY '26 and continue with our $12.4 million fund balance, adding that $298,000 gets us to $12,732,000. And so those are the final boring slides where I say a lot of words really fast. These are the slides where we ask you to please discuss and give us any direction on alternative outcomes or direction that you would like us to go back and consider and use to revise our budget recommendation. So again, the high level outcomes here are that we are maintaining a 52 cent per 100 tax rate. The cost of living adjustment is 4%. The 401k match is recommended to increase by 1% to 4%. And we are recommending the addition of 8.5 positions in the general fund.
So we are right on time. I was 15 minutes long and Adam was 15 minutes fast.
Very fast.
So any questions or comments before we take a break? All right, we'll break. Let's come back at 10:15. We are ready to kick it back off. So we are going to dive into the municipal service districts and then roll into the enterprise funds.
Welcome back to another riveting budget presentation. Our two MSD funds, thankfully, are condensed. They're not as extensive as the general fund budget, but we will hit some high points and inform you what's included in our recommendation. So the FY27 recommended Main Street budget includes budgeted revenues of $742,000 total. $301,000 of that very significant source is coming from the property tax. So we estimate by the end of FY27 that property tax actual will hit $325,000. Unrestricted intergovernmental, again, mostly sales tax. We're recommending a $420,000 budget. And due to the factors that we reviewed in the general fund section, we estimate that those revenues will come in at $453,000 total by the end of the year. These projections, much like the general fund, are based off the county's ability to collect the revenue, so their collection percentage, which was assumed conservatively, and also their current tax projection files, which we do believe will change as we get closer to your June 4th budget adoption and public hearing. Looking at expenditures, the recommended budget includes $934,000 of appropriations. The majority of that, $659,000, is in personnel and benefits related items. So that's your Main Street crews, your events folks, and also some salary splits for some other crews that assist with work specific to the Main Street district. You also have some operating budget at $227,000. That includes things like contracted services for pressure washing, greenhouse rental, bench and furniture repair, Christmas lights, arborists, everything that makes our Main Street beautiful and attractive and a great asset to the city is included in the operating budget. We also have a debt service budget of $47,800, making up that total. So our estimate is $845,000 of expenditures to end the year, and I think that is it on the recommended expenditures. In our other financing sources, as I mentioned in the general fund section, there is a $192,000 transfer in recommended from the general fund to balance out the budget in lieu of fund balance. And due to our revenue and expenditure percentage assumptions for next year, we expect we will only need to transfer $43,000 into the fund to balance things out. Our FY25 ACFR shows a $62,403 fund balance in the Main Street MSD fund. Our estimated fund balance to end FY26 is $0. It is supported by a general fund transfer in, and that's all by design in preparation for FY28. We expect to have discussion related to assessed values and revisit the property tax rate in both districts in that FY28 budget process. So the FY27 budget transfer from the general fund is $192,000. There is no fund balance appropriated. And we do estimate that we will end the year transferring $43,393 in from the general fund. Are there any specific questions related to Main Street? If not, I can move to 7th Avenue. All right.
Before we do that, just from an operational standpoint, we've made the transition from a contracted services on Main Street to 3 full-time employees. I think the best way to say this is we've definitely not, I don't believe we've seen any drop-off in service levels there. and honestly, maybe a little bit of, or definitely an improvement of service as it relates to removing trash from the area has been my perception, just checking that perception. If council's heard anything or noticed anything, we went through a season where we planted the tulips came out of the ground and they were there, so I knew that's a win, Brent. Things that are important, right? And we're now have planted the annuals that are out there. So I think our goal was definitely no reduction in service, if not only improvement. So, Brian.
And I just a reminder on this process. You know, we contracted with a single contractor to do all that work for us. That contractor was retiring and was no longer going to do the work. We did bid the work, and it came in like 3 times as high of the cost. And so we said, I think we can do this internally, you know, and do it at a similar cost. So that was the direction to move it in-house.
I think Brent has some ideas going forward on additional service enhancements as it relates to reducing some overtime across the Public Works Department or Public Services Department, and how we use those folks.
So many of the factors that are included in the Main Street MSD fund are also included in 7th Avenue, although 7th Avenue is a much smaller operating fund. In FY27, our recommended budget for revenues in the fund is $146,450. That's a $9,165 increase compared to the current year revised budget. $57,350 of that total is coming from our property taxes, and $84,000 is coming from sales tax. As I've noted a couple times, that's based on collection percentages related to property tax and also our county tax projection files to date, which we expect will change going into budget adoption expected on June 4th. The 7th Avenue MSD Fund's recommended expenditure budget is $278,184. It's a $59,682 increase in total compared to the current year revised budget. $185,742 of the total is personnel and benefits related expenditures, so an increase of just shy of $10,000 there. And the operating budget is $90,135, an increase of $47,515 there. We've already hit on many of the personnel and benefits related factors, so I will just note that the operating side of this fund includes, again, contracted services that keep the district beautiful and attractive and, you know, suitable to host our events and attract visitors. So in that fund, we have operating budget to do wayfinding signage to help our visitors. We have some streetscape soft costs, so things like benches and other minor details to improve the district. We also have Christmas lights and a little bit of budget for an arborist service. The recommended other sources and uses includes, again, that $76,000 transfer in from the general fund, and this fund's fund balance will be appropriated in FY27. There is a recommended appropriation of $55,266, which is an $11,000 increase compared to the current year. We feel that by the end of FY27, that appropriation will only be $38,144. So we will draw down fund balance if estimates prove accurate, but we'll still have about $17,122, and that floats us pretty well into FY28, which again will be the year we look at not only property reappraisal but also consider the appropriate tax rate for the 2 MSD districts.
Couple of comments about 7th Avenue. We're one full year after the streetscape now, so I think that's positive. We've seen stabilization there and enhancements. We have a new building under construction. If you're on 7th Avenue, there at the corner of Locust and 7th, so that's a positive indicator. And things pretty stable. We've seen the mini batch is enlarging and going across the street, so positive growth there in the 7th Avenue district. And our downtown folks are on 7th in the very same way as they are on Main Street. So, and we will, after the summer, we'll have resurfacing of the streets in that area from the railroad tracks, as we said earlier, to the Greenway, to Mud Creek. So definite, with the water sewer project behind us, that area will be stabilizing, and we'll have some sidewalk work that's coming in a year. Is it coming this year, or we got a year or so? When will we probably bid that, Brent? Sorry.
It's the match for the build grant, so we're going to wait until we find out for the build about the build grant before we get started. So once we find that out in June, we'll start the design and stuff. Okay. So just kind of giving you an update with what's happening on 7th Avenue. So definitely coming this year is new pavement throughout, and then continued. So.
And so that wraps up the 7th Avenue MSD fund and also our governmental type funds. Next up is water and sewer. So I'm going to hand the clicker off to Jenny so she can take us through the water and sewer recommendations.
All right, good morning, Madam Mayor, City Council. This is your last kind of heavy lift before lunch. So we will make our way through the water sewer fund. Our recommended rate increases moving into FY27 are 8% for water and 9% for sewer. We are recommending to increase the system development fees to 100% of the authorized amount. Just as a reminder, cost of living currently is set at 4%. There are going to be 1.5 FTEs hitting the fund, which I'll go into. And then the water rate differential is going to decrease from 120 to 115%. Starting at the top with revenues, the recommended budget sits just under $28 million. This is $1.2 million over the FY26 revised amount. As a reminder, while the water rate differential is recommended to decrease, the sewer rate differential is recommended to remain at 150%.
You will hold right there just as to a point, as we were negotiating with the county and with our state legislators last year, one of the things that council did discuss, or we did offer, is the sewer rate differential, beginning a 10-year process to reduce the differential between the two. So just didn't know whether there were any questions regarding that. We are not recommending that at this time. We are, as that legislation is still in discussion with the folks in Raleigh. So just wanted to point that out and pause a minute and see if there's any point of discussing that for the record. But we are continuing, as we have said, with the water rate differential and moving toward the 2030 equalization.
No.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to permits and fees, the FY27 recommended budget is at $1.8 million. This is $126,000 under the revised FY26 budget. We have $300,000 budgeted for water taps and $50,000 for sewer. On the system development fee side, as a reminder, this is an extremely elastic revenue source. So we are budgeting extremely conservatively going into FY27, taking some external factors into consideration. So right now we have $600,000 budgeted for water and $250,000 budgeted for sewer. But we are estimating ending the year a little above that at $625,000 for water and $260,000 for sewer. Just as a reminder, SDFs are to be used on capacity expanding capital projects. And really, this is where you're going to see your opportunities for decreasing rates because we can use those funds directly towards those larger projects. The revenue is transferred into a capital reserve fund every year. So really, the water sewer fund is just kind of a temporary bank account. And then we do have the transfer out budgeted, so I'll show that as well. And it also reduces the burden on the existing customers.
So the idea there, Jenny, is that by collecting system development fees, they go into a capital reserve fund to help fund future capital projects that otherwise may have, a larger amount of debt issuance, or we can pay as you go, depending on the, reducing revenue bonds because we have the cash to pay as you go for some of these projects. So that's how it benefits the everyday customer day in and day out as it relates to capacity building at plants, those kind of things. Pump stations, capacity building?
Mm-hmm. Adam.
Capacity, really anything like that.
He just
That
expects
is all.
Brent to hold it for him.
And just as a reminder, you really see a ramp up here, right? Because when you all first approved SDFs, they were at 25%. We went to 50% in January, and the recommended 100% is going to begin July 1st. So we'll see that ramp up. And really, FY27 is going to be our first opportunity to understand what kind of revenue this can generate.
I just want to clarify, it won't reduce rates, it will reduce the amount we have to increase rates.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Any other questions or comments on revenues before we move into expenditures? No? All right. If you do, just let me know. On the expenditure side, we'll cover personnel and benefits first. The recommended budget comes in at $15.1 million. It's about $836,000 over the FY26 revised amount. We just hitting on the cost of living, the merit increase. There's one construction inspector, so that is a true FTE that's hitting the fund, and the fund will take about 70% of the salary and benefits for that position. We do have a human resources coordinator that is part-time that will be hitting the fund. And then the fund is also going to be onboarding a co-op engineering student that's going to help them identify some resiliency projects. So those are really the only new positions that will be impacting the fund. 401k match is budgeted at $183,000. This is about $60,000 over the FY26 revised amount. And with that 2% health insurance increase, we're budgeting just under $2.3 million. Moving on to the operating side of things, recommended budget is at $8.7 million. This is actually a reduction over FY26 revised of about $371,000. Contracted services is really going to be your largest increase there, coming in at $1.6 million. We have been able to reduce the credit card processing fees. In our original budget, they were set at $400,000. We've been able to reduce that to just $90,000. Non-capital equipment comes in at $143,000, and sludge management, while we're seeing a slight increase at the water treatment plant of about $55,000, we're actually predicting a decrease at the wastewater treatment plant because of the onboarding of the biosolids dryer. So we are reducing that by about $455,000.
Just would stop and brag about that project, and Adam's in the room, and that almost $500,000 of savings there as it relates to the dryer there, and also helps with, I think it's easy to say from a resiliency standpoint, it reduces a risk associated, not only a cost savings, but a risk of the landfills all of a sudden say, stop bringing us your sludge, which would impact our ability to operate the plant, so.
Yeah, I mean, it hits a lot of strategic priorities. It hits your revenue diversification, it's majority grant-funded project, and then it also has a very large solar array on the roof, so it's hitting your sustainability goals as well.
And the byproduct, we'll see what happens with that and how that may be used in the community, or time will tell. We feel there is some opportunities there. Don't want to overpromise that, but that could have a very positive impact also in the community. And that project was mostly funded by grant, $14 million from state legislature, so all positives there.
Moving on to PAYGO Capital, we have a recommended budget of $1.4 million. This is about 30% over the FY26 revised amount. We just have a bit of a breakdown here in operational equipment. It totals $253,000. We have some bulk water billing kiosks, an autoclave, and then the first phase of the AMI base station replacements. New taps are budgeted at $376,000. We have some improvements to the water and sewer lines coming in at $360,000. We're investing in pump stations and SCADA improvements, just under $200,000, and then improvements to the treatment plant coming in at $238,000.
And does not include, these capital does not include some grant projects associated with, again, resiliency as it relates to improvements around the Fletcher area, Advent Health, and also on the east side of town as it relates to looping our water system, which helps our east side, plus economic development projects on that side. So there's grant money to do that in addition to. So that is projects that we at least would have had to fund out of your rates that now are being taken care of the outside revenue sources, so helping our ratepayers in the future.
Moving on to debt service, the recommended budget sits at $6.3 million. This is a $107,000 increase over the FY26 revised amount. And this is really driven by the fact that we're making our first full debt service payment on the 2025 revenue bond. This is very tiny on the screen, but I've included a breakdown of all the debt service per project. And this was also included in your memo, so if you have any questions about that, feel free.
Jenny, just on this slide, since John has been recalling his young whippersnapper days, I think when he started here with the city, the water and sewer fund had a pretty large fund balance, and there was, I believe, kind of the direction and the challenge was to invest in the system and accomplish some, major capital improvement projects and really develop the master plan. A lot of credit goes to Brent and Adam for really advancing that, but this is, these are a lot of very important and critical water and sewer projects that have been done over the past 12 to 15 years now. And it's a little text on this slide, right? But this is a very impactful slide when you think about the investments the city's made in its utility system.
Moving on to our other financing sources, we've got a budget of $1.26 million. This is solely due to the transfers out. System development fees make up the vast majority of this 1.3, coming in at $850,000. We also have an additional transfer to the Capital Reserve Fund of $100,000. We have $240,000 in vehicle and equipment purchases, and then $75,000 are going towards generator and ATS project. With that said, moving on to fund balance. The fund balance appropriation for the FY27 recommended budget is sitting at $3.2 million. We had a beginning fund balance of 10.7. For the estimated appropriation at the end of the year, we are estimating only needing $1.5 million, and that will wrap us up with a end-of-year total fund balance at 9.2. However, it is important to note that while in the general fund, fund balance is really your indicator on the strength of the fund. For water sewer, it's the bond covenant ratios. So we're estimating wrapping up FY27 with bond test A coming in at 1.12 and bond test B coming in at 1.02. Just as a reminder, to maintain legal compliance with our general trust indenture, both ratios must be over 1. So really this shows that our fund is in good condition. And for that, I will open the floor. I know that was a lot of information, so any questions or discussions you all would like to have? All right. Moving on to the parking fund.
All right, I get to cover parking, and this one will be pretty straightforward. There's no major recommended changes to rates or fees within our parking fund, but there are a few things to go over. There's no new personnel. Operating is in line. If you remember, our debt service is our main payment in this fund, and that's at $810,000 for the parking deck. The fund is reliant still on the general fund for a portion of a transfer in to balance out that fund annually. And that is mainly due to increases on personnel and benefits and operating costs.
Do we remember, or do y'all know off the top of your head, the debt service, is that level?
It's level debt service, not level principal. So it's about $810,000 every year for 20 years.
That's the question.
Yep. Couple highlights. You can find the dashboard on our website. I've pulled some reports from that. So this page is going to show you the actual revenues percent change year over year for the prior period, however you adjust that. Right now I'm displaying January 1st, 25 through December 31st, 2025. So the last full calendar year of parking, you see our average occupancy was growing around 10 to 15% month over month, year over year, outside of October being a very big outlier. That's only due to our waiving of parking fees during Helene in October of 24, and that's why you see that growth. I mean, the leaf peepers, that could be a huge driver, but not 1,800% growth. So you can see the current year actuals for 25 calendar year was close to $1 million, so 994,000. The last year was 798. Really, like each month is around 100K. So add 100K into this for considering the October waiving of fees, and so that puts us at around about $100,000 growth is what we saw year over year. So the parking fund has seen more activity downtown. One other item I want to point out here is about 3%, I think it's like 2.7% of all payments were with cash, 97% were with credit card. And so we are talking about making some changes to the downtown area to adjust for that usage and just put cash and coin in strategic locations rather than in every single meter, as that does drive up our maintenance costs and the downtime of the equipment, with the cash and coin being a component of that equipment.
The other thing that I just noticed yesterday or the day before, with the activity at the courthouse and the reduction of parking around the courthouse, I anticipate some of our lots being higher utilization, particularly those lots that are along King Street. It just occurred to me, I saw some attorneys walking from the courthouse to our lot, the Maple lot right across from City Hall. So I anticipate a higher utilization. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out as people are seeking parking locations around our downtown. So just something to keep an eye on and watch.
Was there any, we talked a little bit about getting data on like which areas seem to utilize the most cash?
Yep.
Did that get anywhere?
We have that, and we're strategically locating the cash and coin at those high usage meters and essentially alternating across the street in a zigzag pattern to
Perfect.
provide that availability, while also somewhat reducing the maintenance burden.
Thanks.
And we also are looking at improvements to the ADA spaces, and we're going to experiment with a couple different options, from individual meter heads at ADA to an individual space marking, and trying out some different strategies there to help improve the ADA experience as well. This is a similar comparison, but you can see just the year over year for January through March of 2026. So January was down around 12%, and March we were up 20% over March of 25. And so you saw a little lull there at the start of the year, but that has picked back up more recently. Revenues by time of day and day of week. So you can see the majority of the payments for Main Street is the blue. That's occurring from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the lunch hour, and then picking back up at the dinner hour. The same is true for the green, which is the surface lots. And then the deck, the data just lags. You don't pay the deck when you enter, you pay the deck when you leave. So that's why that is shifted slightly right on time of day. You can see day of the week. The most popular day are Friday and Saturday, with Sunday being the only day available that the deck actually charges. And I do have to brag on this. Somebody actually used this report the other day and dug in to the filters of the hours and the days, and this is a person I wouldn't expect to be using this, and actually found the exact data in this dashboard to make a proposal to the city. And I just gotta say, most of these reports we make, very little people use, and I'm just happy that someone used the report. And you can see our average transaction is $3.50 per transaction. Again, this is just another way to look at the occupancy, and this is showing calendar year over year, 23 through 25. So the full amount of data is in 25. And I think one thing to be proud of is you can just see the growth in our parking usage downtown on Main Street. So
and that
continuing to grow our occupancy and traffic downtown.
And no rate increases, right? I mean,
no rate increases over this time.
So
this is from the inception of the establishment of the pay to park.
This is utilization, yes.
Any questions on parking?
I'm kind of curious about what the proposal you got was.
The what?
The proposal you got. That data.
We can talk more about. I think we're going to bring back a proposal for council that we received around deck parking and utilizing that on Sundays, and so we'll bring that back to city council.
It came this week while we were working on budget and other things. We just haven't dived into it yet. That's the reason you haven't. So
Sounds good.
yeah.
So go ahead, Mayor. Yes, ma'am. It's for the full paid period. So for Main Street, for example, so the percent occupied, that would be all billable hours for the entirety of the filters. So the filters are currently set from March 3rd, 2023, when we first started charging for parking, through March 31st of 2026, which is like our final month of reporting data. And so on average, over that entire time span, for the billable hours of every single spot on Main Street and the avenues, 43% of the spaces were occupied.
Because it seems like a whole lot more than.
Yeah, when you actually, if you filter these down to, say, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Main Street for the month of July, you'll see it's very, very occupied, right? There's even some instances because of how the parking deck works that it shows that it's 120% occupied, which we know isn't possible, but just due to how the billable hours work for that one, it can show a little bit higher. But yeah, Main Street has done very well over this time period.
And I think another point being, we've seen the utilization go up, the revenue go up. Of course, we haven't adjusted rates, but there's still plenty of parking on Main Street in the deck. I mean, Main Street is the prime, but there is still capacity in our system. Because you could go to the Dogwood lot. I would venture to guess in most cases for our employees, there's still spaces there for them. The deck clearly has capacity in it. I do love to see on peak days in the summer and holiday, or around holidays in the fall, where we're starting to see the deck, filled to the third level. That's a very happy feeling for a city manager in this case with this.
And then events, it's completely full.
Events
and so, yeah, it's really providing infrastructure for the future prosperity of downtown.
Yeah, and the Azalea lot continues to, I think, operate as it should, and so just lots of positive there, and looking for opportunities to expand parking on the south end too. I know Jamie and Lou and Brian and I are always looking for opportunities down there too.
John, oh, I'm sorry. John, you said that we expect an influx of parking because of the construction going on at the courthouse. How will that affect our permit users, you think? Because if they get to those parking places before you get to work, then you're going to have to park.
There's a potential. I mean, mine was anecdotal, is what I just hypothetically, but I mean.
We were very pointed in making sure we made all of our parking management changes in 2023 to really make sure we're doing best practices. And so when we changed the permit structure as well, we made it so if you have an interior permit, you can park in any of the interior lots. You're not strapped to one lot in one location. So you could go and park in Azalea, Maple Annex, or Apple as an interior lot holder. Or if those are all full, you can overflow to Dogwood as well. And so we gave people flexibility. Now their favorite spot might not be available at every single time, but they still have capacity to go park somewhere.
Because I was approached by someone downtown about it. Okay, thank you.
And so we are ahead of schedule. We have special appropriations next. We have about 30 minutes to lunch, so I think we can tackle special appropriations heading into lunch, unless the city manager wants to tell stories of his glory.
So I failed to do my job with one of the council members and did not send the special appropriation sheet. So I need a little bit of time to ask for forgiveness to help do this. So
We're going to take a break.
Can we take a little bit of a break and then come back? Or
That's good.
we'll take a little bit of a break then, and I'll take the blame for this one.
Take 15 minutes.
I think we can do it.
11:15.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll dive right back in.
All right, so home stretch, we are just going to be reviewing the recommended changes to the fee schedule. There is a bit of flexibility in finance that I'll talk to you about, so that may or probably will change when it comes to you for adoption. But starting with community development, they're looking to introduce a no-fee permit for interior residential remodeling. And then they're also asking to increase commercial permits to account for the staff time that it takes to review. In finance, they are asking to restructure the utility deposits. This is an overall reduction for each deposit, but also they're looking to combine the high credit risk and unable to perform credit check category. And they are also going to be adding the minimum tenant amount to the tier 2 medium credit risk. In finance specifically, we will be or are in the works of drafting the language for the credit card processing fees. So those will be reflected in the fee schedule in FY27 as well.
The other thing we'll point out, and I think Adam pointed out at the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, previously on the residential side, the deposits were based on water and sewer. I mean, we only had one category, residential. Adam's not here, but it included water and sewer. We've also added, so in this case, we've broken out for, you know, a large number of our customers don't have sewer, so we created a residential water only deposit and non-residential, and we're able to reduce the required deposit amount because of the coverage needed there. So I wanted to point out how the reduction kind of played out there.
Thank you, John. Moving on to Public Works, they are asking to increase the paving cut repairs. This is the amount that they charge the water sewer fund for work that is done after water line installation. This is really just to reflect the true cost of what the service is. And then we've are recommending the removal of additional fees. These are things that we don't really use or equipment that we don't rent out. And then also the railroad depot, we do not handle the rental of that room. The railroad club does. So we're recommending to pull those out of the fee schedule as well. And then water sewer, this is probably more useful in your packets. This is what the 8 and 9% increases, how they reflect on the actual rates on water sewer side. And then we have the updated system development fees. Just as a reminder, this is at 100% of the authorized amount. And those are all the changes to the fee schedule. Open the floor for any questions, comments, or discussion.
Madam Mayor, Council, as we move into the final slides, I'll let Adam take us home on these last two before any final discussion and direction. I do want to mention there was one housing position identified at the start of the presentation. We don't have an overview of the new housing fund in this presentation, but at the June workshop or June regular meeting, we will be asking you all to adopt a new formal housing operating fund, and that will be part of the budget ordinance. So just wanted to note that in particular. And then also just wanted to highlight, we talked a lot about medical insurance at the last council retreat, and that 2% renewal was a really good renewal for the city. And I just wanted to highlight that we're doing really well with that. So there's a few final comments from me. And Adam, if you want to take it home.
Yep, sure thing. Mayor and council, as we've reviewed, this is a summary table of the overall revenue impacts, customer impacts, and recommended appropriations for FY27. The general fund maintains a property tax rate of 52 cents per 100. Both of our municipal service district funds maintain their 21 per 100 tax rate. The water rate is recommended to increase by 8%. The inside-outside customer differential in rates is recommended to continue to decrease by 5% to 115% in FY27. Sewer rates are increasing 9%, and the differential is remaining the same at 150%. Parking fees have no change, and they are listed in our fee schedule. The Stormwater Fund includes a recommended $1 increase per month per ERU and a $50 increase to the cap. So that rate will be $9 per ERU per month. And for our larger customers with more than one ERU, there will be a $450 cap on their monthly payments. And finally, as Brian mentioned, there is no change to the sanitation fee currently. However, depending on the county's actions related to tipping fees and their overall budget, we may need to revisit this in FY27. Jenny, next slide. So this is our final slide with numbers on it. This is our customer impact we expect in FY27. You'll excuse the FY26 header there, but property tax, no change, with a stormwater rate increase of $1 per month and the $50 cap. No change to the sanitation rate, and then the water and sewer rates we just discussed. We expect the average residential customer will see about $6.39 per month in cost increases due to the city. So in summary on my end, we prepared this budget with a great deal of flexibility, planning to float to the FY28 revaluation period. We're expecting to revisit some revenue sources at that time. We will maintain flexibility to react to what happens in the state legislature, and we feel confident that this will get us in a strong financial position and help us with our revaluation year. Remind council, things may change between now and June 4th is what we wrote at the beginning of the presentation. Also,